Veruca awoke on a morning that felt altogether too cramped for the grand architecture of her spirit. The velvet draperies were askew. The sun was a glaring brass eye. And sitting at the edge of the mattress was Sir Tick-Tock the Logic Weaver, a clockwork hare, adjusting his waistcoat and peering through a very analytical monocle. "My dear," the clockwork hare began, twitching his whiskers as he recalled the splendid, vibrant flamingo and griffin soiree they had attended the evening prior. "Regarding your vocabulary, you spoke quite eagerly to the flamingos of your kingdoms of the Indigo Shires, plural. Now, measured by the strict mathematics of the realm, it appears to be rather overinflated. To the ordinary observer, it is but one modest red brick box and a rather oily hutch." Veruca felt herself grow 3 sizes larger in an instant, her crown nearly fracturing the ceiling of the bedchamber. She was furious, utterly and magnificently incensed. "Take your mathematics and fold them into a paper hat," she roared, the words trembling with the majesty of a queen. A tiny, gray imposter toad perched upon her left shoulder, croaking, "You are an imposter, you know. It's just a pathetic little red-gray box from the age of expansion. Where is your inherited chest of gold pieces?" Veruca swatted at her shoulder and turned her incandescent gaze back to the hare. "It is plural," Veruca cried, her voice echoing down the winding corridors. "It is the twin kingdoms of the Indigo Shires, for I have written the reality into existence with my own ink." She began to pace the boujard rugs, recounting the great and terrible epochs of her survival. Veruca drew herself up to a full magnificent height, her eyes flashing like summer lightning, as she leveled her gaze directly at the mechanical monocle of Sir Tick-Tock. "Look upon my 4-year ink toll," she proclaimed, her voice ringing out like a cathedral bell. "I marched entirely alone through the thorny bureaucratic forest, surrendering 30 out of every 100 golden tarts to the king's royal auditors. I did this with no emperor to co-sign my charters, no duke to lend me capital, solely to prove this entire backward realm that I am a sovereign weaver of my own fortune. And behold the alchemy of the scythe hutch! What a dreadful, oil-stained contraption shed, a placement only for iron blades and rusty lawn shears. And I transmuted it into a sanctuary. I scaled a rickety ladder myself. I calculated the mystical drip-drop factors of the clouds. And I unloaded heavy sheets of galvanized steel from a rumbling wagon with my own 2 hands. and I hand-hammered a roof of pure silver tin. I accomplished this feat alongside a fleeting charlatan man, a phantom who offered me nothing but the measly scraps of his seconds, while secretly hiding an entire alternative universe from my sight. And yet, out of that tiny, cramped hutch, I engineered a safe haven where even a weary, displaced badger lord could safely shelter his 3 small cubs and rebuild a world. It is net neutral through the magic of the wind-cooling vents and the copper winter water veins. I broke the heavy iron ball and chain of the endless galas that chained my time of the weekend and consumed my physical vessel, my spine. I escaped the loop. So yes, Sir TikTok, they are my domains, because they build memory palaces for multiple families at a time. So do not speak to me of what is actual, you clockwork creature. Sir TikTok blinked, his monocle fogging with her heat. Veruca sat before her looking-glass, staring at the fierce creature in the reflection. Was she merely a disillusioned wanderer? A stubborn idiot who had simply woven a fantasy because she was terrified of a world where she couldn't afford a tiny burrow of her own? She remembered her father, a boy who, at the tender age of 14, was forced to live out of a horseless carriage and picked the locks of musical boxes just to trade them in for a toasted puff of molten curd and minced meat to satisfy his hunger for the day. He and her mother had spun a reality galaxies beyond their origins. Yet, when Veruca had first begun capturing moving tapestries of everlasting oaths out of thin air, her father had patted her head and said, "How terribly cute, my dear. It almost looks as if a professional wizard made those moving little pictures." Years of being called cute. Years of being perceived as a hobbyist in a pinafore. And yet, Veruca mused, a wild, comical smile breaking across her face. Just yesterday, a grand journeyman of the loom arrived at my court. He is handing me multiple 5-figure sacks of sapphire dust just to have the mind that lies belong just past the brim of this perhaps mad hat to look upon his business. He asks no questions of my price. He bows and says, "Veruca, you are the golden thread, the legend of the loom." Was I just full of moonshine? Or am I a sorceress who understands how to make a soul feel a craving they didn't even know they possessed? "Do you know what I want?" Veruca asked the quiet room, her armadillo armor softening into a gown of velvet. "I do not care to cross the sapphire seas, nor do I need to conquer foreign castles, though I shall occasionally splurge on the finest imported curds. I want enough go whistle to a wall wealth to live exactly as I please. I want to sit in a towering, absurd, velvet periwig with my dearest friends, whispering nonsensical riddles through brass megaphones. I want to pour entirely too much milk into bowls with straws and starflakes, streaming ancient animated hairs upon the wall because I simply want to. She turned her eyes to her shoulder, where the tiny, grey imposter toad still sat, looking terribly smugged. Veruca reached up, pinched the creature by its spindly hind leg, held it up to her sharpened irises. "Get off my jockey, you insolent piece of lily-pad dander," she whispered with delightful venom. I know the wilderness I have survived. I am writing this story as I go, and it is uniquely mine to live. You may go catch a wind with a sieve and go get yourself permanently tangled in a bramble bush. Go dance with the Jabberwock. And with a swift, magnificent flick of her wrist, she tossed the toad out of the tower window, right in the middle of a blooming meadow, where it landed with a soft, insignificant blop. Veruca took a breath, adjusted the curlicues framing her invisible crown, and prepared to claim the glorious, empty space of her beautiful, curious day.